In the palace of the beautiful castle, in the corridor, a girl on her knees begged the emperor to love her. What should she do to make him care for her? Should she start acting like Janet? If she succeeds, will he call her by her name as fondly as he does her? Would he look at her with warmth? But to all the girl's belittling, the emperor replied that he would rather die than such a thing happen. But why should he do this to her? She is, after all, his daughter. She was with him more than Janet. When he looked at her, there was so much contempt in his eyes. His voice, echoing in the girl's head, had never sounded so cruel. For all the girl's efforts to make him love her, he replied that he had never considered her as his daughter. Until the very end, Claude was cold, and more despair settled in Anastasia's eyes. Suddenly she awoke as a small child lying on the floor playing with a toy. What had happened to her? Why was she suddenly reminded of this book? A novel she had read that a customer had forgotten. The title and plot were unpretentious and naive. Was she remembering this novel because the princess in it has the same name as her? What on earth had happened to her? Because she threw away her toy, the babysitter came up to her. She asked her to stop being mean and play quietly with her toy. She picked up the toy from the floor and gave it to her without even wiping it off. What an unsanitary situation. Is she, after all, the rejected princess, and that's why she belittles her so much? The child was not interested in the toy, so she threw it away again. The maid was very angry with the princess because she was interfering with her sewing and being naughty. But the child still didn't want to play with the toy. The girl couldn't tell because she was a child, but she wasn't interested in the toy at that age anymore. If she was bored with the toy, the maid assumed that the child wanted to sleep, so she put it in the crib. She left the room. She probably went after the head maid. But if she's just going to bring another toy, she'd better not come back. The little girl thought. When the maid left, the little girl noticed the toy carousel in front of her. She couldn't understand it at all. After she went to sleep, having taken sleeping pills, she woke up already like this. How had she suddenly become a child? More than that, she became a princess. The girl started screaming again, so the maid ran into her room. She said they had no money, so she would only have to play with this toy. The maid's child's crankiness was very tired, and she would no longer babysit her if she cried again. She has work to do. The girl, Dasha, began to cry. She is a child after all, she needs to be nicer to her. She thought that apparently not all princesses are treated appropriately. She was an orphan in a past life, so being reborn as a princess was a pretty good option. But why a princess that everyone hates? In this world, her father, a real lunatic. According to what she has heard from the maid's conversations, the Ruby Palace, where she now resides, used to house the emperor's concubines. Simply put, it was the home of his harem. At least, that's how it was before her birthday, when the emperor killed everyone in this palace. Her mother was a dancer invited to the royal banquet. She attracted the emperor's attention, whereupon he stripped her of her innocence and forgot about her. She died, leaving behind only a child. And that child is now her. Since then, the emperor has also forgotten about her, his blood daughter. Almost no one took care of her, except for the nurse, who treated her carelessly. What was he thinking, abandoning his wife and child? Pondered the girl. Leaving the child in a place of carnage. Ever since she first heard the story, she has had nightmares every night. But what scares her more than the nightmares? It is the emperor himself, whom she has never even seen. Even born a princess, she clearly hasn't gotten lucky. What if the emperor got angry again, and decided to kill her just like he did his concubines back then. She needed to think about something else, or she would go crazy with such thoughts. In this world, her mother named her Anastasia. It was the same name as the princess with the sad fate of the novel, The Beautiful Princess. I think her mother wished her a long and happy life in the care of the emperor. But unfortunately, Anastasia from the novella died at the age of 18. She most likely died at the hand of the emperor. And why does she keep thinking about it? Meanwhile, 2 more maids came into her room. They were surprised that the princess was still awake. And why had they come at all? She wasn't going anywhere anyway, since she couldn't walk anyway. Standing by the princess's bed, they talked amongst themselves. Lily is very anxious. She causes a lot of trouble. By coming to her, they could just take a break from their work. And if she starts crying, they need to rock her cradle so that she falls asleep faster. The princess, who heard all their conversations, wanted to tell them to stop seeing her as evil. She, like these maids, was stuck in this cursed palace. They talked about her like she was some kind of crybaby. But after all, she is the most obedient child in the world. Lily even worries that she cries too seldom. The emperor never came to check on her, so they all think she is a reject. But she wasn't going to stay a forgotten princess as long as she could. If she could escape from here by stealing the jewels from this room, she could go a lifetime without worrying about anything. So if His Highness did not remember her, it would be even easier for her. His Highnesses don't care about her at all. And she's still surrounded by such luxury, that's the life. After all, she lives in a palace, so she has regular meals and a cozy, soft bed. Even though things aren't going as well as she'd like, she's still a princess. She plans to grow big and strong, steal the gold, and escape. But first she needs to get out of that crib. The maids who watched over her said their lives were hanging in the balance. The emperor should snap his fingers and they are finished. And for what sins were they assigned to look after this princess? Word spread through the palace of a ghost who appeared in the kitchen every night. They were terrified. Who knows when they too might become such ghosts? Even though the girl couldn't say anything, she didn't want to live in that palace either. Only she wanted to raise enough money to live the rest of her life with dignity. After a while, she could already crawl around on the floor without any problems. She immediately began to take an interest in the jewels that were on the shelves in her room. Lily thought she just liked the sparkly toys. When the princess got tired of playing with them, she would bring her new ones. The palace was beautiful, but due to the decrease in its funding, she might get less than she would like. When she escapes from here, she will take all these jewels with her. Her life at the palace went quite smoothly. At first she was nervous, but she hadn't heard from the emperor in months, so he seemed to have really forgotten about her. She ate, exercised, slept well, and grew day by day. When she learned to walk, she could start slowly packing for her escape. But it also seemed that some things were missing from her room. Lily seemed to have taken them away so that the girl wouldn't get hurt. One beautiful afternoon she and Lily were sitting on the couch together. And she was reading a book to her. The sorcerer of the tower possessed such powerful magic that other magicians of the whole world could not compare to him in any way. The princess was very interested in the fact that there were sorcerers in this world. She knew that this was not some random country, but true fantasy. Lily kept reading the book to her. The sorcerer of the tower was so powerful that he could turn the empire to ruin. The princess was stirred by her stories. She wanted to see it, to see real magic. So that no one could use his power, he had shackled his heart. After all, such power can be used for terrible purposes if passion overcomes reason and feelings overpower common sense. Legend has it that the sorcerer of the tower destroyed the kingdom that existed in these lands before our empire. The girls loved Lily's stories, and she wanted to see magic with her own eyes one day. As they were looking at the book together, the girl noticed a man there. Lily said that it was her father. The girl understood that this was the man who had abandoned his wife and daughter, and now he knows what he is doing. The current emperor, the hero who overthrew his predecessor, a despotic evil ruler. The bastard who threw his daughter away after he slaughtered an entire palace. And after all these deeds, they call him good? Oh yes, because Lily had never called His Majesty's name yet. She asked the girl to look at the picture. Her father, His Majesty, Claude de Obelia. When the maid said her father's name, the girl became uncomfortable. After all, that was the name of the character in the book. And her name was Anastasia de Obelia. She had the same full name as the princess in the book. The princess, His Majesty's precious daughter. So many coincidences with that story in the book. Sometimes such coincidences can be creepy. Maybe she's just making it up. The book The Precious Princess is a fantasy book for girls that has become a hit on the internet. In perfect keeping with the title, there are two beautiful princesses in the book, and of the two princesses of the Empire of Obelia, the protagonist is the second princess, Jeneth. A beautiful, angelic girl with a good heart. She is beloved not only by her people, but by the entire continent. And among those who adored Jeneth was her father, Emperor Claude. To the people he became a hero and a liberator, but in reality he is a heartless man who killed his older brother, the real heir, and took the throne. Jeneth alone managed to melt the heart of this cruel man. Claude only found out about her when she was 14. Her mother was Claude's sister-in-law, but after he became angry with her and broke off their engagement, she died shortly after giving birth. Aunt Jeneth tried to keep her away from Claude, so she concealed her birth and gave her nephew into the care of the Alpheus family. The first time they met, Claude was cold to Janet. However, Janet, as the protagonist is supposed to be, was eventually able to melt Claude's icy heart with her charm. With the support of her father, she married Prince Alpheus, the best man in the empire, and lived happily ever after. And in doing so, the first princess did not receive the slightest bit of attention. Anastasia was the same age as Janita, but was born earlier. Claude had known about her since she was born. She was exiled to live in a palace for concubines, and so she grew up fragile and vulnerable. She first saw her father when she was 9 years old. Following the lights and noise of the banquet, Anastasia left her palace late at night and met Claude in the garden of the imperial palace. Claude, of course, remained indifferent, turned around, and left. But for someone like Anastasia, who had never received even a crumb of attention in her life, this encounter was fatal. She did her best to get her father to like her. She tried her best in both her studies and her ethics. And on the day of her debut, when she turned 14, all her dreams were shattered. Anastasia, with her gloominess and reticence, and the bright, cheerful son like Janet. Perhaps because of this contrast, it is not surprising that Janet, unlike Anastasia, was loved so much. Anastasia was good, too, but she was not destined to be the best at everything. Instead of envying Jeneth, Anastasia taught her the palace life. But in the end, she only lost to Jeneth even the one thing she had always dreamed of, her father's love. Moreover, it was the poor princess who was murdered by her father. She was accused of putting poison in Janita's glass. Of course, she was simply set up. The whole thing was the work of Aunt Janita. She was determined to make her niece the chief heiress to the throne. Although it was certainly unnecessary, since Claude did not even consider Anastasia his heir. And anyway, if Anastasia had known there was poison in the glass, she would have preferred to drink it herself to save the second princess. After all, she knew that if anything happened to Janet, Claude would be terribly sad. Yes, Anastasia was just an unhappy, foolish princess. Aunt Janet should have simply demanded that she give up her rights to the throne, or even forced her to do so. But we must not forget Claude's guilt. He killed Anastasia without her being proven guilty. It happened on her 18th birthday, exactly 9 years from the day they met in the garden. In the end, the truth was revealed. But Claude felt no guilt or regret over the murder of his eldest daughter. Janet blamed herself for everything that had happened. Until she was comforted by her fiancé, after which she put the past behind her. And in the end, they lived happily ever after. Only she couldn't understand why it was so pointless for the script to kill Anastasia. Not that she liked Anastasia that much. As long as she was doing well, she didn't care what happened to anyone. But there's no way she can remain indifferent. Because she seems to have been reborn as this very Anastasia. The girl was upset that she was reborn as this particular princess. The girl began to cry, but the maid began to comfort her. Lillian York was the only one who claimed that Anastasia was innocent. And for this, Claude killed her next. In spite of what happened in the Ruby Palace, she volunteered to be the princess's nanny. And the reason for this loyalty is Anastasia's mother. Lillian had always admired the extent to which Diana's soul was as free as a bird. But Diana died shortly after giving birth. And shocked, Claude killed everyone in the Ruby Palace at the time. The girl was 100% sure that she would die just as it was written in the book. And Lily would die, too, protecting Anastasia. And why did Lily, along with the princess, get such a fate? She wanted to be reborn as Janet. And she didn't want to be Anastasia. Still, she was right. She needed to escape the bloody palace, and as soon as possible. When the girl was old enough to walk, she would walk with her nanny in the garden. She asked her for chocolate because she loved it so much. She said she loved not only the chocolate, but also her nanny. But suddenly another maid came up to them. She said sternly that Lillian had said that the princess should not be given sweets for nothing. In spite of her words, Hannah still wanted to give her a chocolate bar. But another maid explained to her that this girl asked all the maids for chocolate, and if everyone gave her a little bit, she would eat a lot. Then the princess went to the second maid and tugged at her dress and said she wanted chocolate. When the maid looked into her eyes, she knew she could not refuse her and handed her the bundle of sweets. And she asked the girl not to tell Lillian that she had given her sweets. The girl kissed Nanny for giving her the chocolate. Hannah told her that she should have been the one to give her the chocolate and get a kiss from the princess. While they were arguing, the girl ran on. Time went by very fast. She was now 5 years old. After years of hard work, she was able to get the maids to like her. She used to get revenge for her bad attitude, but nothing good would come out of feuding with them either. And then she wasn't wrong. Valuables were indeed missing from her room. Court servants usually took nobles from noble families, but that was not quite the case in the Ruby Palace. At first they were cautious, but when it became clear that Claude didn't care about her or the Ruby Palace in general, they became so bold that they began to steal decorations and ornaments from the walls. The girl was very upset when she noticed that they began to steal the ornaments that the girl wanted to take with her as well. She was so upset that she even wanted to report everything to the emperor. But then the first person he would execute would be her. In the end, Lily, protecting her interests, had a big fight with the head maid, but everything stolen that should have been returned with her dismissal was never found. She should have known all about it when she didn't buy her new toys, supposedly for lack of funds. But there was a silver lining here, and because of this lack of return, Lily failed to notice the disappearance of these jewels, which the princess had already managed to hide. After the princess ate her chocolate, she went to get the flowers to give them to Lily. But she was stopped by another maid. She noticed that Anastasia had just eaten chocolate, so she needed to wash her face well, and wash her hands. She thanked the maid for her clue and thought the best option would be to wash her hands in the fountain. The Ruby Palace is known for its beautiful scenery, but for a child, not the most appropriate place. As she was washing her hands, she saw her reflection. She was very beautiful. And she looked just like her mother in appearance. But such unusual eyes came from her father. Only members of the imperial family have such basic eyes. People in this world have magic, but the imperial family has special magic. And because of her eyes are this color. Everyone said she was the only one with eyes like her father's. When the girl had washed her face, she went to pick flowers for Lily, red roses, blue violets. But then she noticed something strange. It was as if she had found herself in a different place. After looking around, she realized she was lost. The girl chose the road that seemed to lead her to the palace. After a while she ran to the castle, but it was not the Ruby Palace. Where had she wandered off to? She went into the palace to see if anyone was there. Even though it didn't look like anyone was there, it was all neat and tidy. She looked into several rooms, and there was no one there. She thought since there was no one there, she might as well use it. She wondered where to hide her things for her future escape. There's not much to hide in the Ruby Palace. What a good thing she found this place. If she avoided the servants while cleaning this palace, this place would become her treasure trove. When she got back to her room, she began to paint as if nothing had happened. She wondered what had become of her former body. Had she overdosed on sleeping pills and just died? Could she have frozen to death? Winter was in full swing, and she hadn't turned on the heater. But she was an orphan, so she had no one there. There was no way she wanted to go back there. If you don't consider past life death, Anastasia's life is heaven on earth. She has food everywhere, she doesn't need to earn money, she has her own possessions. Or maybe because of her rebirth, she has no trouble learning the language? It seems that in this world it is not pleasant to learn speech and writing at an early age, so when she wrote a few letters, the babysitters were delighted. And just like that, learning burst into her daily life. Well, nothing fatal happened. The Ruby Palace was like an isolated place, so the rumors about her didn't go anywhere. She wasn't going to meet Claude in the Imperial Garden on her 9th birthday. And she would run away before she turned 18. So it is imperative that as few people as possible know about her. She must avoid meeting Claude at all costs. Therefore, she must not behave too defiantly or suspiciously. As the princess was painting in her room, the nanny came in. She asked if the girl wanted milk. She replied that she wanted warm milk. The maid said she would heat up milk especially for the princess and left. As soon as the door closed, Anastasia took out 2 bags from under her bed and tied them to her feet so that no one would see that she had something. She was hiding these treasures here and wanted to leave them here for a while longer, but she heard the maids talking. Who were talking about how they would have to clean up the whole palace. She hid the bags under her dress, and when no one was looking, she ran to the place she had recently found. By the time she got there she was very tired. The girl thought it wouldn't be safe to hide inside the palace, so she had to hide near it. She climbed over the bushes and found that she had nothing to bury her treasure with. If she tried to bury it with her hands, Lily would notice the dirt. So she made the decision to leave them that way and come back tomorrow and bury them. When she ran back to her room, she was very tired, so she fell asleep right away. The maid who came to wake her up noticed that the princess was all wet. She thought that the princess was ill, or that the sun was shining too much into Anastasia's room. And she ordered the curtains to be hung in the princess's room tomorrow. And so several more times she escaped from the palace. It had to be every few days, so that she wouldn't get caught. Honestly, she likes her life now, and she would like to live like this forever, but somewhere beyond these walls walks Emperor Claude, who she's supposed to meet. So all this stuff and her chance, so to speak, to avoid these terrible events. The next time she arrived at the palace, it was just as quiet. But today she noticed real sculptures made of gold. Everything in her palace is made of marble. But there are so many here that if she took one, no one would even notice. The girl thought, and as she was trying to take one statue, a man came up behind her.